You're going to tear the whole engine down, right?
Whole thing, absolutely, yep.
She's about to break
really
the...
wants to use that breaker bar.
Right. Are you going to let me help?
No.
Explain why we had the oil consumption, the coolant as well. But what is sort of the next step for this engine? Hello and welcome to Gearhead 704. I'm Matt, and that's Matt back there, right there. See, causing trouble is normal. I also have Tiffany here today with us. Hey. And what we're doing today is we're going to tear this engine down, find out what's wrong with it. Think it's at least got some blown head gaskets. Think we'll find any fried pistons in there, Matt? What do you think?
I don't know if we'll find any fried pistons. That may be due to a ring that wasn't worn in properly, or maybe even a collapsed ring.
Yeah, who knows? All right, so we'll see, but that's what we're doing. Tiff is here to help, and I think you're going to tear the whole engine down, right? You just said you didn't need me and Matt.
Whole thing, absolutely, yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's easier to take it apart.
Well, you're going to put it back together today, too, I think, right?
No.
No? I thought you said we just need to get out of the way and let you do it. So no, that's what we're doing today, guys. Obviously, the 10 holes are not how we're going to disassemble it. They'll make a good engine stand, though. But anyway, we're getting the hoist over here. Going to bring it up and, yeah, start tearing into it. So let's find out.
And use your favorite engine stand.
My favorite. Oh, that engine stand's a piece of crap. All right, we better get going. Before we get started though, I realized I didn't really tell you much about the background of this engine, in case you're new to the channel or it's been a while. This is a 331 stroker that we have here, and the problem with it is a couple problems. One, burning a lot of oil. I think it was like a quart every 400 miles. The other issue with this is we actually had coolant in the crankcase. It was literally dripping down in the crankcase. That's why I think we had some head gaskets. Instead, this engine actually used to be in this car, which I call TarHeel Fox. I took the engine that was out of this car, which is my 88 SSP, I put it in TarHeel, and I plan to put the stroker right here into this one. Now, this one needs a lot of work. I'm in the process of putting a cowl back on. So this cowl still has to be welded on. I got a lot more to do with that. But yeah, I wanna know, I've got to rebuild this engine. I wanna know what's wrong with it. And that's kind of the background on that in case you missed those. So gonna go ahead right now, get it up on the stand, and then we'll start tearing it apart. Okay guys, put Tiffany to work finally, and we got the engine here up off the hoist on the stand. We're about to tear into it. So Matt actually has left us, so I'm getting to be the teacher today. So I'm your teacher, you must be my student.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're in trouble kind of, but anyway. We're gonna start by, well, we gotta drain the oil, but I'm pretty much gonna have Tiffany do most of it. I'm gonna help her a little bit, but the lower intake's gonna come off, valve covers, heads. We're gonna get all the way down to the block. So it's gonna be kind of a lot of time lapse, but I will stop at certain points if I see anything, like we get down to the heads, take the heads off, see the head gasket. But husband and wife team, let's do this. You ready?
Let's see it.
All right. All right, guys, she's doing most of the work. I'm helping her out a little bit. She's doing a good job. You ever tearing an engine down this far before?
I have not.
I've teared it down this far before, but I've actually never had the heads off. So we're about to get in unknown territory for me, but Tiffany is doing a great job. So the next thing we're gonna do is take the lower intake off, then the headers, guys, and then we get to the good stuff. We see what's underneath these heads and the pistons and all that. So Tiff, keep up the good work.
All right.
Back to time lapse, y'all. Guys, Tiffany has been killing it. I was gonna help her with the headers, and you made mincemeat of that. So
You did. You held it for me. Thank you.
yeah, that's all she let me do. But I wanted to stop right here because this is the first time that I have ever. I kind of mentioned this already, but I've never taken. We already kind of took this one off just to see how it would work. But I've never even taken rocker arms off, and I guess I'm gonna let Tiffany do it first. Maybe she'll let me help. I don't know. You gonna let me help?
There's the rod.
She's on top of. Are you gonna let me help?
No.
She said no.
I mean, maybe.
Look, she's already doing it. I haven't started the time lapse. Okay, anyway, next stage you're gonna see is that the rocker arms and the push rods are gonna come out.
Yes.
And then the heads. So we're moving right along, and then we'll see what's under the head. That's gonna be the good part. Not gonna let me help. Can't believe she- We made a lot more progress. Tiffany did all this side, and I've never done it before, so I made her let me do this. So thanks for letting me do that. Anyway, he's over here with us now. And before we take the heads off, Matt's actually found a few things that are interesting. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. Okay, yep, like I said, we got Matt here. So Matt's gonna show us a couple things. Before we take the heads off, you already noticed some things, Matt.
Yeah, I did look. I think we found a possible problem with the head gasket already. I think we found a blowout towards the outside of the gasket. If you look on the block, well, if you go on down, you know, it seemed fairly clean. Kind of curious about what this black spot is here. And the reason I am, if you look at this right here, hopefully you can see that well, not too bright. There's that dark streak right there. So right at this long streak right here, this dark streak, I got one right here too. Look at the head gasket. So this is the block, this is the head. If you look at the gasket in between, it's kind of already messed up a little bit. And if you look right here, we've got an actual complete blowout on the gasket. I don't know how deep it goes, but that is absolutely missing gasket material right there. So it's right at this bump where I believe where the cylinder is. If we flip it around, so this is the other side, and you can see at this round portion where the cylinder wall is, or the impression where the cylinder is, this head gasket is solid all the way through. There's like no issue there. There's no missing material. Completely different than what we saw over there. I think it's gonna be very interesting to see what that gasket looks like underneath this head. Not a guarantee, but I got a pretty good guess that this head gasket between these two lines is probably gonna be pretty ate up.
And there's another reason we think that too. You got the plugs right behind you.
Yeah, so if we look 5 here, it's actually a little oily. You can see it smearing off like that.
Yep.
You see it's wet. Look at this one. This one's got so much. It's actually got a buildup. It's got a buildup of stuff.
And these plugs have been in less than 100 miles too.
Less than 100 miles, and it came out of number 6. Guess where number 6 is? Number 6 are these two valves right here.
Right where we have them.
Which number 6 cylinder, that's the bump for number 6 cylinder. We have streaks on both sides. I think we have a complete blowout on number 6, at least on the oil part.
So what's cool about that, guys, is that's what he's suspecting. We're gonna pull it off and see if you're right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's worse. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good, you can already tell even though the heads aren't off. Oh, Tiffany's getting excited over here though. She's about to break
Really
the...
wants to use that breaker bar.
Right? All right, we're gonna stop talking to you guys. Go back to the time lapse. Let her do what she wants to do.
Yes.
Look, Tiffany did an awesome job. Going ahead, tearing everything down. You even pulled the piston out.
I did.
Yeah. So good job pulling the piston out. That was cool. And actually, do you still have it? Is it close by? I want to show them.
Over here.
There we go. Take a look. Turn it underneath and you'll see there. Yeah, right there you can see it says DSS. This is actually a DSS block. I forgot, which is not really much different than it had the, it has a main girdle support on it. So, but it's pretty much just a Ford block. But anyway, what I was trying to say, you got to go home.
I do.
She's got to leave. So it's going to be me and Matt finishing up. Also, I managed to, my back was hurting when I came in today. I did a little bit of work. That's the other reason why she did a lot of work, because I'm trying to take it easy on my back. So Matt and I are going to finish this out. We have some neat things to show you guys.
Yes.
We think we found out why it was consuming oil and coolant. So we're going to show you guys that. But anyway, we're going to say goodbye to Tiff. Thanks for all the help today. Go home.
Yep.
Take care of our children.
Yep.
And we'll see you here again on the channel sometime, right?
See you next time.
All right. So I got Matt here with me, and we learned some things. I just kind of teased that right before Tiffany left. So we're going to go ahead and kind of walk you through. We're pretty sure that we know what the reason is for the oil consumption, and we have a pretty good suspicion on the coolant as well. So anyway, Matt's going to go ahead, bring him and kind of explain it. But this is what? We're on cylinder 6. We took the piston 6 out.
Yeah, and if you remember the video that we showed earlier before we took the heads off, I showed where I put the pick in. This is the area I put the pick in, where the gasket material was missing. And if you look right there, see that dark stain, that wide dark stain that comes all the way down to here pretty much? That head gasket was blown out completely from the cylinder to here.
And also too, like we noticed, you're kind of showing me here, we've got some different patterns here. Like this looks similar and this looks similar. This looks different.
Yeah, so you just kind of look at the pattern that was kind of left on the block from the head gasket. You can see this one, you know, kind of gray, a little bit of black. This one right here, it's a lot darker black, but not as bad as this one. This one's really black. Yep. Then you come over here, that one's actually a little black too, so that one might have been leaking as well. But yeah, you can see the difference in the patterns, and that's what you're looking for, especially when you got something that's supposed to be the same one right after the other. If you see something different, that, you know, one's not like the other, then that's usually where the problem is.
Okay, and the gasket kind of matched up, and we're going to show you guys that.
This is where the gasket was, and again, when I had the pick, I was putting the pick into this area. That I was right, the gasket material was completely blown out.
Yeah, look, it's like gone.
Yeah, it's completely gone from the cylinder all the way to the crankcase, actually.
How does that actually work, Matt?
Well, it's a metal crushed gasket, which basically means there's layers of like metal with a little bit of expanded air in between them, or expanded material in between it. And as you bolt it down, it crushes all those air pockets, those little pockets in the gasket, and it creates the seal as you crush it down.
And so that's not going to have a good seal there because it's blown out.
That has no seal, absolutely. Okay. If you notice the ring right here, the metal ring around the cylinder, that's not blown out. And I think that's why we didn't have a tremendous amount of blow by in the crankcase, like taking the oil cap off and having like a steam engine look. I think that's because the main ring was still intact. That's where the main cylinder gets a lot of its sealing from, especially for the compression, is that metal ring. A lot of times if you blow out a head gasket from overheating it or pre-detonation, it'll actually melt that metal ring and blow out from cylinder to cylinder. We pulled a motor apart not too long ago that had that problem.
Let me give you guys a better look at these head gaskets. What do you think? I'd say they're blown.
Yeah, that was blown through cylinder to cylinder. Yeah. And that was got really hot from pre-detonation. As far as the oil consumption, I think we didn't have a lot of blow by because the metal ring was still intact, but whenever it would come down on the intake stroke, it would be sucking oil in, you know, past what's left of the head gasket into the cylinder. Because this was the cylinder that we had the plug that was actually like had chunky oil on it. Like it was burning a lot of oil.
Cylinder 6, yeah.
Yeah, cylinder 6. It was burning a lot of oil. So it was getting it from somewhere. It doesn't look like it was getting it past the rings. The rings look good. The rings were not collapsed. Basically determined that on the intake stroke, it was sucking some of the oil that was splashing around while the motor's running and sucking it right into that cylinder. I think, if you look over here, I think we had a little bit happening right there on number 7 as well.
Okay, it was starting.
Yeah. You can see this number 6, the gasket was blown out on both sides.
Oh yeah,
so
definitely.
that's a significant blowout.
Okay, cool. Now that explains our oil consumption, but not really the coolant completely, right?
Right.
And we have other suspicions on that.
Right, because if you see, like, the gasket isn't actually blown out. Like, okay, here's a coolant port, coolant down here. The gasket is not blown out at those ports. Yeah. Where we were getting coolant, and we actually have an indication of where the coolant was entering the crankcase, and we'll show on the intake over there.
Let's look at that, guys. All right, Matt's got the head here. We got the piston that Tiff took out, and we've got our intake manifold. So what do we got here?
So I'll show you this real quick. Here's the piston rings. You got your compression rings here, which is, you know, your upper and lower compression rings, and then you got your oil control ring set right there. A lot of times, you know, if a motor's like really overheated, the rings will lose their spring and they'll actually fatigue, and what'll happen is they won't pop back out when you come out of the cylinder. They will actually, when you pull it out of the cylinder, it will just look like this. They won't push back out.
Okay, ours
so
are
that would be
pushing
a collapsed ring. Yours is pushing back out, so the oil consumption, at least in this cylinder, is not from a collapsed ring.
Okay.
Here's our head. So we did have a coolant leak. We're kind of figuring that our oil consumption's coming in from cylinder, which is number 6.
Yep.
So the oil consumption's coming in from here. We think we had a little bit here, but we want to talk about the coolant issue, the coolant in the crankcase. Here's the intake that we put in less than 1,000 miles ago?
Yeah.
See this right here? That's when coolant mixes with oil. It, like chocolate milk turns to a sludge. But it wasn't in your oil pan. When you pulled the dipstick out, all of your oil didn't look like that. So that was a pretty small leak, but it was obvious a leak. We're gonna look, see, here's cylinder number 6, number 7. So we're gonna go ahead and take this intake. Gonna line up the cylinders. And look. Look where the gasket was blown between 7 and 6, or 7 and 6 was completely blown. And 6 was the worst. And if you look right here, that matches up where we're getting coolant sprayed onto the bottom of the intake.
Because there's nothing going on back here.
Right.
And we have a good gasket right there too.
Right, exactly. And again, here around the coolant ports, our gaskets are somewhat, you know, still fairly good around the coolant ports. And it's not a lot of coolant leaking. Like if your head gasket was blown out like this over at your coolant port, that's when you start getting like milky chocolate milk oil. You pull the dipstick out and it's full. So
there was some coolant definitely getting in.
It was
though,
some
obviously.
coolant. It was a really small leak. The combustion chamber leak was pretty good, but the coolant wasn't that bad. So let's see if we can figure out why that was happening.
Matt's got the head here, and we're about to turn the lights off on you. But first, let me explain why we're going to do that. So Matt, you got a straight edge. What are you going to do here on the head?
Yep, so my concern is that the head is warped. Aluminum heads warp very easily, especially if you overheat them. You said you had overheated these heads.
Yeah, I had this car since 2012, and when I first had the engine done, I did overheat it. My temperature gauge wasn't working and I boiled over. So I do know that happened like 8 years ago with this engine, but yes, that's right.
Yeah, and since we know that, that's why I suspect this problem was caused by a warped head. We're gonna use a straight edge. I've cleaned off the surface of the head, and we're gonna put the straight edge up against the surface of the head, put a light behind it, and see if we can see light between the bar and the head. If we see light between it, that means the head is warped.
That's because the surface isn't flat, right? Completely.
Correct. This is a bar that I actually use for setting automatic transmissions, the end play shaft on those. So this is a perfect straight edge that's machined to be a perfect straight edge. So that's why I put it up against that, because for this thing to work correctly, the surface of that head has to be perfectly flat. Both the surface of the head and this bar should be perfectly mated together, and you should not be able to see light in between them. If we do see light in between them, we got a warped head. Right there.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right there.
Sure enough.
Yep, you can see the light between the bar and the head.
Yep.
That's a warped head.
All right, Matt, so we did see light, so it looks like this head's definitely warped. And what's interesting, that spot where the light was coming from, that's right around where we were having the issue, right?
It was happening right here.
Yep.
So
where's our head
let's
gasket?
take our head gasket. So it was happening right here.
Look at that, guys.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So it was right in this area. Now keep in mind, my bar was only about 10 or 12 inches. To really be sure, you would need to check the entire surface of the head.
And we are going to have these heads sent off and do that, but this
Absolutely. But I mean, the worst blowout on this gasket is at the worst spot that I found.
Where the light shone through?
Yeah, where the most light shone through the bar in the head.
Yeah. All right, guys, there you have it. Matt explained why we had the oil consumption, and also it seems pretty good that that was the coolant as well. And we think we have warped heads. Now, the heads are actually not going to go back on here because I'm going for 400 horsepower, and those heads choke down this 331. But what is sort of the next step for this engine? That's a good question. And as you know, if you look at the car behind me, right, the SSP, I've been doing everything on it. I'm even replacing the cowl. That's where this engine's going in, right? It's going in this car, like I said at the beginning of the video. I'm going through every sort of nut and bolt in this car. And you know what? I want to make sure I'm very thorough with the engine as well. I want 400 horsepower at the wheels. I want to see if I can do it with the 331. So I'm going to take this engine here, the 331, and I'm going to take it to my engine builder, Adam over at Kannapolis Engines. So that's where it's going to go next. I'll let Adam take a look at it, see if it needs a rebuild, see if it doesn't. Again, you know what my horsepower goals are, so maybe this combination wouldn't get that anyway. It might need more higher compression. I don't know. I'm just going to take this to Adam, talk to him, and see where we can go from there. But yeah, the cool thing, guys, is we did get a good indication of what's going on with the engine. And the other thing was Tiffany got to tear down the engine. So I only helped a little bit. I mean, she was all about it. You heard her. She wanted to do it all, so which is good. My back was hurting a little bit anyway. So big thanks to my wife for helping out. That's pretty cool. And thanks to Matt for helping me figure out what's going on with this engine. So stay tuned to the channel. I will be letting you guys know soon Are we gonna do a rebuild? Are we gonna do a whole different block? Who knows? We are staying small block Ford guaranteed, and hopefully I could reuse my block. But anyway, we'll find out all that stuff later. Gonna take the engine over to Adam, like I said. So that's pretty much it for this one. If you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button. If you're stopping in for the first time, you gotta find out what's gonna happen with the engine, so please subscribe, and we'll see you here next time on Gearhead 704. So that's, look, I went to hit stop and did that. Again, you know what our horsepower, can't talk. So that's pretty much it for this one. I hope you guys find, can't talk. I've been bad about this lately at the end. It used to be a lot better.
I tapped it down to you.
Yeah, I caught it. It was like birthing a baby. Just like, you know, we had other 4 kids, right? Isn't that how it worked?
Just as easy.
I think there was a doctor involved. And it wasn't the Fox doc, just so you know, you weren't involved in that, man. This is blooper material. So anyway, let me get back to the regular.